Thanks for coming out and watching the oxymoronic Reddit Professional Show, where I showcase the best and worst of the internet. Here I comment on brilliant and hilarious comment chains regarding dumb shit on the internet for you to enjoy. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell button so that you get notifications every time we come up with a new video. Enjoy this week's show.
Quick reminder to not give away your salary requirement in a job interview. I know I've read this here before but had a real-life experience with it yesterday that I thought I'd share. Going into the interview, I was hoping/expecting that the range for the salary would be similar to where I am now. When the company recruiter asked me what my target salary was, I responded by asking, "What is the range for the position?" To which they responded with their target, which was $30,000 more than I was expecting/am making now. Essentially, if I would have given the range I was hoping for, even if it was plus $10K more than I am making it now, I still would have sold myself short. Granted, this is just an interview and not an offer, but I'm happy knowing that I didn't lowball myself from the get-go. Most interviews I've had, they will ask, "What are your salary requirements?" So I just answer, "I'm actually looking at the entire package, benefits, insurance, stock options, retirement planning, and other fringe benefits that come along with the base salary. What are you offering?" That puts it in their court. I've never had someone evade it at that point. I like this. We'll try this tactic as well. Thanks for sharing. As someone who hires people for living, you can try this tact, but many companies will want a number or won't move forward. While it's fine to want to put the ball in the company's court, be prepared with an answer just in case. I know some will disagree, but it's not wrong for a company to ask how much you want to get paid. Ask for double or triple your earnings if you want, and just say you can be flexible if need be, but be prepared for an answer, as many of the best firms who aren't desperate can and will pass if you aren't willing to be transparent, unless you truly are special, which few including me are. For those in New York or Boston where they are limited regarding what comp questions can be asked, earning v seeking, when a recruiter actually shares their budget, it will frequently be at least 20% less than they actually can spend. This is another frustrating thing about those online form type applications. Many ask you to input a salary requirement, and many of those won't let you input something like negotiable, as they only take hard numbers. I feel like I'm gaming it a lot of the time by trying not to offer myself out for too low, but also not disqualify myself by asking for too much. You can just put $1 or some ridiculously low amount that the input will accept when asked about it later. I'll just upfront say I don't make it a practice of setting salary expectation until I know the role and benefits better. You still end up in the ongoing dance back and forth eventually, but at least it gets you past the computer form and you're negotiating with a real person at that point. One of the reasons I took my current job was my boss starting the interview with, "So the salary is $X, would you like to hear what the job entails?" That is how it should be. A person's first interest in a job is usually the salary. I hate that it's taboo to talk about, it's the main motivator, yet we're expected to be secretive about it. It's not greedy to be interested in the amount, it's sensible. It's literally a huge part of what defines your life and future. They're treating it like a car buying experience. I'd rather they disclosed salary range before the interview. I don't want to take a half day off work to go waste it at an interview where the money is crap. Last job I interviewed for, I told them my minimum salary requirements. Said I'd really like to be at this number, which wasn't much more. Talking to a number of people in my field and my area, I felt pretty confident I was being pretty reasonable. He nodded and said, "Okay, that's a decent number." Second interview, came up again, said the same thing. Third interview was him and a panel of other people I'd be reporting to. His boss brought up salary and I said the same thing. And he says, "Okay, I think that's doable." You wouldn't believe what some people were asking. So I get the job offer a few days later. 10K below what I said my minimum number was. It was less than what I was making at my current job. They would not budge on that number. I said that I appreciated the offer, it was great meeting all of them, but I felt like their offer was below the fair market value of someone with my skill set. An hour later, the guy I originally interviewed with called me back wanting to know why I didn't accept it. I told him the salary was too low, and he proceeded to call me every name under the sun. I hung up on him about halfway through the rant. The job was open for another 8 months or so, they finally had to outsource it to fill the position. This almost happened to me. They started the interview on this note: "Look, we're a startup, we don't want to waste anyone's time. So, what are your salary requirements?" I told them what I made currently, and that I couldn't afford a step down. It was a dream job that would have meant leaving a job I truly hated with no growth potential, so I was willing to skip the negotiations and leave money on the table. Frankly, I would have been surprised to learn they could afford me, but I figured it was worth the conversation. They laughed. One guy, who I'd known but not well for several years, giggled a bit, but the guy who asked the question chuckled heartily. And then he said, "Yeah, we can handle that." So I assumed I'd lowballed myself and made a mental note. The interview went great, and they asked me to come in for 1 day of work as a tryout. I was on 4 10-hour days, so that was no problem. I came in, worked an entire day. 8 hours. Did a lot of great work, impressed a lot of people. They emailed me a week later and offered me about half of what my salary requirements were. "We don't want to waste anyone's time" was one hell of an interesting choice of words. After my first job, I interviewed at another place, and when they asked what I was currently making, which I don't think is a fair question to begin with, I took my current salary, added a bunch of value based on how short my drive to work was, free gym membership, job security, etc., and gave them a number that was probably 30% higher than the actual number. If they required proof or something, I would have just explained how I calculated it all. I think the whole interview process is really shady. The interviewee shouldn't have to give a range, it should be on the employer to offer a range and the interviewee to decide if it's acceptable. In Oregon, they're no longer allowed to ask what you currently or historically made, only what you expect to make in the new position. This is also true in recently, New York. I believe it's up for passing in CA, but don't quote me on that. CA labor laws are their own beast entirely, and it's hard to keep up. No longer allowed in CA either. My husband had a phone interview a couple weeks ago, and the person asked, then after a few seconds of silence remembered and corrected herself, LOL. HR, what salary are you asking for this position? Me, I really love the opportunity, and I'm confident if this is a good fit, the salary will be within range. HR, we need to put down a salary. Me, what is the general range of salary for this position and level of responsibility? It can go on and on. It is a dance. I usually ask on the first call from the headhunter/recruiter, what is the general range of compensation for this position? This is something they normally have in front of you, and the person cold calling is usually not the person who does the negotiation to see your starting range. There have been a couple times the HR absolutely would not budge and required a number. I would simply say, between 75% of current pay and 25% more than current pay, depending on the benefits and job responsibilities. If you get backed into a corner, put a big range, and then later say, the benefits aren't nearly good enough, and the responsibility is high enough that the low offer simply isn't an option. This is coming from a software developer specializing in cloud/SaaS/agile/medical/finance, so your mileage may vary. I'd rather an employer laugh in my face at my number than mentally fist pump at the opportunity to get my service at X% off for who knows how many years. I made this mistake at my last job. It was some entry-level warehouse work, but I found out after almost 2 years that I was being paid $4 per hour less than anyone in the office, including the new guy who came 2 years after me. The owners were family friends too, so really feels bad, man. Damn. What did you end up doing? I had to move states for school, so either way leaving the company was the only option. It was pretty lame though, because I led my own mini department, small coffee roasting operation. I dealt with brewing cold brew and putting it on tap for nitro, which was a metric but load of work on its own, plus I did the usual packaging and other daily warehouse tasks. My cold brew method I developed myself, won second or third in a national competition, and I think there was some prize money, yet I got no reward for my efforts to start it all. Just our warehouse team of 6 brought in over $8M per year, not to mention the coffee shops that bring in $5M per year. They were making bank, yet couldn't spare the cash to pay anyone a good enough wage. I just happened to be the most underpaid out of anyone. The co-workers were awesome, which is the only reason I stayed so long, because the management was pretty poor at best. I visited when I came home recently, and the place is kind of falling apart now. Our manager was fired, which caused 2 of the other guys to leave, and the star accountant/office manager just quit a week ago. It's a great operation, so it bums me out that the owners are so sucky. I'd love to keep working there if they were fair to us, but sadly they are not. Nicely done. For people reading this thread wanting to know more about approaches, here's a repost of mine from a while back. The best time to talk about salary is when they have decided they want to hire you. If they try to talk about salary before that time, try to put them off by saying things like, "Why don't we continue the conversations to see whether there's a good fit before we discuss salary?" When you start to discuss salary, do everything you can to have them make the first move and cough up a number, see below, and other comments in this thread. At that point you can start the negotiations. The company almost always has room to adjust, especially if it is a big place and they have someone that they want to hire. They don't want to go to the expense of screening and interviewing more candidates, checking references, making offers, losing work and getting done, etc. for another few thousand a year. Make sure you look beyond just salary and are considering a complete compensation package, which may include vacation, more accrual or more to start, signing bonus, relocation expenses, retirement contributions, etc., in addition to the salary. Some of these may only be available to executives though. Ideally, you would want to treat each one of these separately, negotiate base salary, then vacation, then lower deductions on your health insurance, etc. If you have the time, meet with a professional counselor and work on how to negotiate. When I was applying for jobs after graduate school, I went to a counselor and we spent an entire hour on negotiation techniques. It cost $60 and I used what I learned to increase my starting salary from $73,000 to $88,000, with a grade increase to boot. That was over 15 years ago, so I'm at over a $200,000 return, not including the percentage increases during the raises, on a $60 investment. Make sure you look at Glassdoor, but you'll find a wide range and it may not be that helpful. I put the material from my time with the counselor here, so take a look at it and ask if you have questions. The key points are as follows. These negotiations should always be done in person if you can swing it. The first person to mention a salary number is at a disadvantage. If they press, you can say things like, "I'm sure your company has a standard salary range for this position. What is it?" Or, "If you have a previous salary history, given the new responsibilities of this position, I don't believe that my previous salary is terribly relevant to the discussion." Talk in ranges. When I was offered $73,000, I responded with, "I was expecting something in the low 90s. That was when he said that that type of salary would be for a level 4 and this is a level 3 position that they offered, so I countered with, then maybe I need to be a level 4. I got the level 4 and $88,000. Okay, I get that advice, but then how do you avoid wasting your time, and theirs, interviewing for jobs that could be massively below your requirements? Some job descriptions are so vague that the potential salary could be anything. I would hate to go through 5 to 6 levels of interviews only to find that my needs are $100K more than they have budgeted for the role. One's approach is to ask in a way that they have to answer. I noticed that there's no salary in the REQ. What's the budget/typical range for this position? If they ask what you were expecting, you might try to defer and do at least some interviews, with the hopes that you can find someone who will say a number.
If you enjoyed this week's effective way to waste time, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. If you are enjoying the series, leave me a comment below. A special shout out to the content creators. You frickin' rock.